Good evening, Littleton, and welcome to tonight's Select Board meeting on Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. We're going to begin tonight's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just going to read a disclaimer before I read tonight's agenda. The listing of matters are those reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours before said meeting, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may be in fact discussed. Items may be taken out of order and at times that differ from those listed below. Other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. So for tonight's meeting, we're going to begin with organization. We just did the Pledge of Allegiance and a reading of the mail. We're running a little bit behind schedule already, so I'm not going to read the times. That will be followed by department and board updates and requests. We have a sewer working group update, and we have an LELWD approval of amended language for House Bill 4866, an act authorizing the town of Littleton to use certain land for construction of a water treatment facility without Article 97 restrictions on such use. That will be followed by public input and members' updates. We have a joint meeting with the Finance Committee and Director of Budget and Finance, Cheryl Herrick-Stella, to discuss fiscal year budget adjustments and special town meeting warrant. That will be followed by a request of ONeill Backstage Lounge for extensions of their premises for outdoor table service of alcohol. That discussion will be followed by the Select Board discussing their goals for this year. The October special town meeting, review the draft warrant and vote to insert articles on town meeting warrant. The dog leash bylaw and the Select Board stipend rule of necessity. That will be followed by a town administrator update, an update on reopening town offices to the public, and general updates. That will be followed by a consent agenda, Cannabis Control Commission's notification of a marijuana establishment for Littleton Apothecary to authorize the town administrator to complete and sign. And then that will be followed by the minutes from our August 24th, 2020 meeting, and then our meeting will adjourn. So, Mr. Layton, if you could start with a reading of the mail, please.
Sure thing. Within the board's packet, we have two items for the board. The first ends up being a letter from DCAM inquiring within a number of towns, primarily around 495 and Mass Pike, Littleton included, looking for industrial and flex space of approximately 5,200 square feet. They're looking for submission of proposals for the use of this by DCAM by September 24th. So if anyone knows any properties, feel free to contact the town administrator's office, and we can connect them with combis as far as responding to the RFP. The second correspondence is addressed to the Chair of the Select Board, informing the town that we have been awarded $200,000 under the Green Communities Competitive Grant Program. Specifically, this will fund improvements to the high school, middle school, Russell Street School, town offices, high school unit ventilators, as well as high school HVAC reheat control upgrades. So this is all work that's going to be done in basically the next 3 to 4 months, consisting of not only changes and upgrades to heating control as well as LED lights, and continue the work Littleton has done to save energy and save money for the town.
Great, thank you.
Just if I can just jump in real quickly. On the
Sure.
first one, Joe, DCAM, just for, if there is somebody out there that may have some space available, one of the residents, Division of Capital and Asset Management and Maintenance?
Yes.
Or is it Maintenance Management? I would assume they're looking for 5,200 square feet of office, mostly office, or,
Flex or light industrial space.
so we do have a fair number of vacant properties, maybe on
Yeah.
Porter or Taylor, or, you know, there may be some opportunity for, I don't know if we want to do something proactively to let folks know. They're not looking for necessarily property that is owned by the town, they're looking for
They're
just
looking
flex
for
space.
any opportunities within the town of Littleton. If there's any specific property owners, can work with assessing department just to identify some of those business owners, around Taylor and Foster Street, just to at least try to send something by mail, let them know of opportunities. If there's anyone with the EDC that may know, can easily pass this along as well.
So I was gonna just say to you guys, if you're okay with it, I'd like to kind of run with that and see if there are any property owners, just from the top of our head, if you guys think of somebody,
Yeah.
that you think might fit that bill, I'd be happy to reach out to them on behalf of the board, just to say, hey, there's this opportunity, we can forward this letter to them and say, this is the bid process. It's in your court, but just wanted to make you aware of it, because they may not, through the normal course, they may not become aware of it. So if you guys are okay with it, I'd like to try to
Yeah.
take that proactive approach.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Glavy?
Yeah, absolutely. Chuck, as our liaison to the EDC, is the natural person for that. I get two of my heads I'm looking at here.
We're looking at 4.
Yeah. In any event, I wish we could get to a point where we could actually formalize that would be something that, once it hits our desk or inbox, the EDC could run with it. But in the interim, having Chuck do it is as good as we're gonna get. And I would just say to you, Chuck, not to forget to drop a note to
Jim,
James Kennedy,
Yeah,
who
absolutely.
probably has a list of folks.
it was definitely top of mind, I appreciate it though, Paul.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm assuming that it is for this item. Greg Mcgregor has asked to raise his hand. I don't know if it's about this item.
Sure. Sure. You want to let him in?
Sure.
And just ask him.
Excuse me, Mr. McGregor, you're talking to the select board, if you'd like.
Is it about this topic?
If you could just state your name and address, is it pertaining to this topic we're discussing?
Thank you. Good evening. Gregor McGregor, counsel for citizens on the water treatment plant issue later. I just had a question whether I may be permitted to speak briefly to that subject at 6:35, or should I wait till 6:45 when you've scheduled public input in general?
If you could wait until we address that topic, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you, I will.
Okay, that answers that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a great idea, Chuck. It's perfect.
good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep, excellent. Thank you for offering that. Okay,
Can you just send me a copy of that clean? Thanks.
Yep.
all right, great. So now we're on to department and board updates and requests, the sewer working group update.
I was away last week, but I believe Joe participated in that meeting, and we have Nick here too, so I can't give an update, but maybe one of those folks can.
Mr.
Hey,
Lawler?
want me to go, Joe?
Sounds good, Nick.
Okay. Yeah, we've been meeting every week, and as you guys know, we're kind of up against the fall town meeting timeline. We're doing, working as hard as we can to try to wrap this project up. This Friday is a very important meeting for us. We're going to be finding out first time the financial impacts of the project, the cost, and also how it impacts the residents of Littleton. That's really that meeting Friday. I'm going to be reaching out to Steve Venuti. Hopefully I can touch base with him Monday and Tuesday next week. But we're kind of getting close to wrapping up the needs assessment. Financial piece is the last piece, as well as the site selection process, which we've narrowed down to 3 properties, and we're beginning to conduct appraisals and start that process as well. So I'm hoping by the time fall town meeting comes, we have a full plan in front of the select board and board of water commissioners.
Great. Excellent, thank you. Any questions or comments? Great. Thanks for the update, Nick, appreciate it. Now we're on to the next item regarding the approval of the amended language for House Bill 4866. Going to speak to this as well, Nick?
Sure. Senator Eldridge has done a tremendous job over the last really weekend of getting me a lot of information. This is the last change. Today is the fourth revision that's been in front of you guys. And basically the reason for that is Senate Council had a few minor additions and tweaks. But I had a great conversation with Senator Eldridge today. He's very hopeful that this gets completed this month. So hopefully, as well as the sewer home petition, he did allude to that as well. But there's really no major changes in the revision that's in front of you tonight, other than he added some details back in. And by he, I mean Senate Council. They added back in the acreage of the two parcels. And instead of a deed restriction, it's a conservation restriction on the old parcel where the highway garage was. But there's really no substantial change to the language. Really, through all four revisions have been very, very much the same.
Okay.
I think Paul kind of alluded to this last time, that there could be some very minor changes that come back, and here we are again.
Right. Okay, great. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I have a comment.
Sure.
I'm really happy this is getting close to the end, finally. But, I was not comfortable with the way that this land swap was handled from the beginning. I think everyone knows that. I think I saw Article 97 protections in the deed and the grant, and other people did too. And looking at the letter from the EEA in the packet, it seems clear that the EEA also thought it was protected. So that's fine. During the debate, residents brought it up and it was dismissed. And I think Nick and the commissioners said that it was not protected. And I stood up as a citizen and I said that getting a state to change it would take 6 months, and that was dismissed as unrealistic. But here we are a year later, just about from October of last year, getting it changed. And I just can't help but think that if we had addressed this Article 97 head-on from the beginning, that we wouldn't be up against the time pressure that we are now. So I would ask for more transparency on this kind of process going forward. And I understand the urgency for the treatment plan, and I'm not going to tie it up, obviously, but I just wanted to say that before we vote.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nordhaus. Nick, I didn't know if you had any response to that, or? No? Okay.
No, sorry, Cindy, I don't have a response.
Okay, thank you. Do we still have public?
Does your son want to say anything, Nick?
You have no idea, Chuck.
No, I do.
Well, maybe you do, you got five.
So, Mr. McGregor?
So, right. Hello, Mr. McGregor. If you can, again, state your name and affiliation.
I'd be glad to. Gregor McGregor. I'm an environmental attorney, and my law firm in Boston is McGregor and Legere. We do work on Article 97 and municipalities all the time on this subject. In brief, the letter from EEA that just arrived with this legislation, which they've given their imprimatur tour, acknowledges on yet another subject that my clients were correct. This is a change of use. And while the letter finds that mitigation satisfies what they think are their standards, I'd like to say just three things. We've been saying it's a change of use. It turns out to be true. That means Article 97 is triggered. That means a bill is needed, as you have already been following in the legislature with the help of the senator. I noticed, though, that the legislation that the EEA has given its broad brush approval to as being adequate for your consideration, I'm sure you will agree, does not state the kind of restriction that should be imposed on the property. While I'm glad to hear the department thinks it should be a conservation restriction, and that makes sense, the legislation does not say that. The restriction is not in perpetuity. There's no mention of perpetuity, and the legislation does not say it's in perpetuity. The restriction has not been drafted, nor does the legislation say there should be no construction, land alteration, or only passive use for water supply protection, which in our opinion it should. So in bottom line, there's no CR, hasn't been drafted. The legislation does not say to whom it should be given and by whom it should be held. As you know, a CR should be held by a third party, not by the town itself, or it sort of evaporates under the doctrine of merger. So a third party should be selected and, willing to hold it. That's just my first reaction, having read these two sections of the legislation 3 times today. So I urge that you take care to get council's opinion and to let us drop you a line, a letter, or an email tomorrow or the next day, itemizing how it isn't over until it's over, and you want to make sure that whatever you decide is over, so that your project is not interrupted by litigation,
Excuse
or political controversy, or scrutiny by the Department of Revenue or others afterwards. Thank you for this moment.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Can you just clarify who you represent in this matter?
Yes, the citizens that we've been writing to the town and the secretary and the senator
Which
on
residents?
behalf of a large group of citizens in town.
Is there a formal complaint or a letter of engagement filed? We're not familiar with specifically who those citizens are.
Oh, there's a lawsuit pending against the town. We represent the plaintiffs in the lawsuit.
Okay, so you've been in touch with our town
Who are
council
they?
prior?
Just for the record,
Yeah.
record, who are they?
For our record.
I'll give you the front page of the complaint.
Yeah, could
That's in
you,
court already.
just 1 second, please. Could you cite the case for me, please?
Oh, I don't have the full name of the case in front of me. Perhaps someone in the audience does.
Do you know the name of your client?
Yes, of course we do.
Okay, can we hear it?
Well, one client, the lead client, is Robert Otto.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Mr. Otto is available to speak if you would like him to.
No, well, his attorney just spoke on his behalf, so we do not need to hear from Mr. Otto. Thank you. And I'm not really comfortable since our counsel's not present.
And litigation's been brought, so we're not gonna discuss an active investigation or
Right.
litigation.
Right. Okay. All right, so now we are on to public input and members' updates.
Well, we have to,
Oh, do we have a,
Take action.
A motion.
oh, we do have a motion.
yes.
Thank you.
Ah, there we go. Mr. Glavy?
I had to unmute myself here, sorry, and you might as well look at me while I'm talking too. Let's see. I'll move that the board vote to approve the amended language for H 4866 as drafted.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote, please. Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. So the motion passes as drafted. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Yeah, enjoy the night. Thank you.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Nick. Go easy on that boy.
So cute.
Mercy.
Okay, so now we're on to public input and members' updates. Do we have any hands raised, Mr. Layden?
Shankar has raised his hand.
Okay, excellent.
Hello, Shankar. If you can state your name and address for the record.
Name is Shankar Gautam, address 160 Air Road, Unit 3, G7 Lab LLC.
Good evening, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a request to the board. As per the Kansas Testing Laboratory, going to be located at 160 Air Road, Unit 3. I had a brief conversation with Select for Chuck DeCoste today, and while I was talking to my attorney, because of the hours of operation, I was planning to have my equipment run overnight, but because of the restriction of 12 a.m., 6 a.m. to 12 a.m., he said I would be in violation of my SGA if I leave my equipment or automation running overnight. So I would like to make a humble request to the board to give me 24/7 hours of operation with restricted business hours from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. so that I do not have a competitive disadvantages with other 5 or 6 labs that are operating within the state that are of similar nature and similar business.
Okay.
Shankar, this is Chuck. I would recommend that you may want to widen up those hours of operation, hours of, not operation, but
Business
hours, and maybe slide it back to 8 a.m. and slide it a little bit later than 5 p.m. I'd hate for you to be kind of painted into a box, and, if you had a rush and you needed to get the machine set up and you had to be out of there by 5 p.m., I think that would be unfortunate.
Yeah.
So, maybe 8 to 8 or something like that, I think would be reasonable. But as far as the equipment running around the clock, because it frankly, it can, and does in many testing labs, my recommendation would be that, the 24/7 would be fine for the equipment to be running as far as hours of operation, but as far as business hours, we'd want to restrict those, but not as restrictive as you've stated.
Yes, thank you, Select Board Chuck.
No problem.
So, I'm sorry, define business hours for this, so no one can come or go after 8 p.m., let's say?
So the business hours would be just the hours restricted for people dropping off samples or re-bringing in samples throughout the state to be tested. But in my plans, if the lab gets busy, as stated earlier in previous meetings with the select board, I would like to have staff in there until 12 a.m. If necessary. Sometimes if the automation doesn't work or the equipment runnings have to be taken care of, even I might have to go in at 3 a.m. or a staff member might have to go in at 12 or 1 a.m. to make corrections with the automation and the equipment.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have any problem with it at all.
It all kind of came to light through a typo, really, right, Joe? It was 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. instead of.
Right, and I like the suggestion 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I think
Something
that makes
like that, I
sense.
think, I
Just
mean-
for the flexibility.
So
Yeah.
that paragraph 6 there would say hours of operation are 24/7, but deliveries of samples shall only be between the hours of 8 to 8 or whatever is reasonable.
Ultimately,
Correct.
Shankar
Yeah,
will make
that
that
would be
decision,
great,
but
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
But
something along
it's
those
not
lines.
open to the public during the
Correct.
the off hours. Right?
Nope.
That
Nope,
maybe should be.
it's not.
okay,
Yes, it's not open to the public during the off hours. It's only staff or if we have to go and let, for example, if a freezer fails or our instruments working and we have results to give out, I don't want to be restricted at that time to go in at 3 a.m. and make the corrections I need to make at that time. Or if a freezer fails, I need to be able to go in and put materials into different freezers so that I don't lose $1,000 worth of material in the middle of the night.
okay, sure.
So, I guess, just a question
If
for the,
workload dictates, sometimes we might be working later, just to get the volume through. Right now, the state is facing about 8 weeks to 9 weeks of backlog of samples. So I just want the same playing level field as every other lab that is operating in the state right now, and making a request if we could make this small correction for my business to operate in the same competitive environment as other labs.
Right, yeah. It does not appear that the board has any problem accommodating you. We just need to come up with the proper language.
so, within section 13 of the executed HCA, we have amendments or waivers of any term, condition, covenant, duty, or obligation contained in this agreement may be made only by a written amendment executed by all parties prior to the effective date of the amendment. That's something that I could work with town council in Chicago to try to come up with just basically a simple one paragraph amendment.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, we obviously it's not on the agenda, this is during
Yeah.
public input, but it's just something that I think that we can at least give him the commitment that this is something that we all are okay with. And he can work with his attorney, or he can draft his own language, and with us working with Chris Heap, our attorney, we can definitely get to this, and then we can execute that amendment as the HCA states.
Actually, I have one more question. Shankar, when are you,
Yes.
when are you meeting with the planning board?
Yes, that was going to be my last request. The planning board, second hearing is on September 10th. So if the board could advise, or the assistant town administrator could write a small email to the planning board or the town planner saying that this is in the works and these kind of hours of operation of amendment was discussed and the board is okay with it, and somewhere along that line of language, so that the planning board can close out the hearing with those hours of operation on coming Thursday, so that the work doesn't get delayed any more than that. That would just be great. Just a kind request from my side to the board.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we can do that. That does make sense. Not a problem.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you to all the board members.
Thank you, Shankar.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public input, Mr. Layden?
No, we don't have anyone else.
Okay. So go on to members' updates. I'll start with Mr. Glavy.
I'm fine.
Okay. Mr. Nordhaus?
I guess I wanted to talk about the Zoom meeting of the joint meeting between with the Board of Health and the school committee. I think, I know everyone is tired and fatigued and has been arguing a lot, and I'm afraid that if we're not being very polite, that things are only going to get worse. And I think that there were definitely some people who felt that they were not allowed to speak at that meeting. I'm wondering if, for accountability, we could just announce the person who's running the Zoom mute button at the beginning of the meeting for public meetings, so that everyone knows.
I don't think it's any one person, though, is it?
Yeah, I think, well, it depends on the board.
If it's a webinar, is it different from if it's just a meeting?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe and Matthew, maybe I'm not the right guy to answer this, but, I mean, you've got some controls, Judith's got some controls, or the LCTV person has some controls, but we also, like, the chair can say, I'm sorry, we're not gonna take that. Like, you mentioned, I mean, that I guess is transparent already, Matthew.
Yeah, so
because she's
that was
saying it
exactly
openly.
my point. Like,
Yeah.
someone saying we're not gonna take that is different from someone getting muted or kicked or their hand being lowered by an invisible person behind the scenes.
Right.
That was my concern.
So, but I always thought, like, when people came into the room, they're engaging with someone that's letting them into the room. Can't they see who already is?
Well,
person
like,
is?
I was watching that meeting from home and I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see the participant list or anything on that meeting.
Huh, okay,
So there was no information about who was running it.
yeah.
Yeah, so when this comes from, personal experience and some of, especially when it's a heated discussion, and trying to communicate with the chair as far as recognizing people and giving people turn. Like I've seen instances where people don't lower their hand after speaking. It's hard to gauge, are they continuing a three-pointed conversation, or are they looking to just stay unmuted and recognized during, say, rebuttal periods? And that's one of the challenges, and especially if you're not doing it every single time. And I haven't watched the meeting. I do intend to, just so that I'm aware of the context. And communication with the chair as far as then recognizing, that's where that's important. I've even made mistakes, and Paul Glavy was on the receiving end, where I meant to like mute or something, and I actually dismissed him from the meeting. He had to then join in under a different user profile because mistakes happen. This was early in Zoom. I haven't done this in a while.
So could you show me
not
how to dismiss
intentionally.
Paul from the meeting?
I'm not clear what you
Give
mean by
any
that.
ideas.
Which button is that?
See, now
I've
you
learned
don't
my
have
lesson.
Power. Like, this is exactly what we're talking about.
And that's where that's one of the challenges, is especially following that, is to try to take cues and communicate with the chair. A lot of times it ends up being like that direct communication, and sometimes feel, it's with a lot of comments and hands raised, it is easy to lose track. I do understand as far as that it can have an impact as far as if people had things to say, but it also is something that even within the same board, it changes, so that what may happen, say, at that meeting, the previous meeting, we could have had different people controlling and all that, because it also depends on LCTV and their availability to sometimes double team. Like, we have 2 people assisting here, one to run the feed and switch things, and then another to sort of do the role I used to do, letting people in and recognizing people. That's one of the challenges.
Well, I think sometimes 2 people will join a meeting and they immediately put their hand up. And it might not be the time that they actually want to speak, but they want to make sure they're recognized.
Get in line.
And that gets confusing too, if your hand's been up, so you sit there and you might be like, all right, did they forget to put their hand down? When do they want to speak? Is this what they want to speak about? So it's not an easy balancing act to manage a meeting in that capacity, so.
And, I mean, we can, as a board, take on such a policy and say, we're gonna let the public know that this is gonna happen during our meetings, but we can't dictate to another board. I mean, there are courtesies, and Ed Mullen, when he became chairman of the planning board, he wrote up on here, be polite, be courteous, be kind. And oftentimes we need that little reminder, just to, pump the brakes a little bit, take a breath. We're all doing what we feel is best for our community, and we may not all agree, but need to be respectful of one
Right,
another.
yeah, like another elected board, we can't really say to them, hey, this is the way you need to run your meeting.
Yeah,
We've
we've provided on a staff level, especially for other staff that then are sometimes administering the meetings. We've provided guidance as far as trying to treat it like a physical meeting, and to communicate with the chair to recognize and to follow sort of that decorum, because if we had an audience here, yes, that same hand can be raising, but the chair gets to really recognize. The difference is in Zoom, you can't storm out of a meeting. Like a physical meeting, you can, to sort of provide a different verbal way of nonverbal way of communicating.
Right.
And I think with all these, and unfortunately, I still think we're going to have Zoom for a little bit longer. If there are things that we can improve, LCTV has been great as far as putting together best practices to go out to the boards that don't have staff support. And that if there's something that we could do to supplement and say, hey, in these instances. And I think we can sometimes identify on our agendas when are going to be hot button issues that we may need to be a little bit more aware of. We can probably work with LCTV to sort of give some best practices and steps to maybe make it a little easier, rather than sort of have some confusion that could lead to a feeling that someone's First Amendment rights are being stomped on.
Right. So I think that, like, the problem wasn't an honest mistake. I mean, it was a choice that the board made, and I'm not going to say whether or not it was correct. That's not my point. It was well within their rights. They were well within their rights to mute people. I just feel like civility was, it felt like it wasn't completely civil, I suppose. And I think that the people who are on the receiving end of that especially felt that. And we can ask that other boards do that. I'm not saying we have to dictate anything, but I think it would be one step towards a little bit more people understanding what's going on, and it might help. Certainly, I think you're right. We can identify meetings or topics that are going to be fraught.
I think it's important to point out too, and I don't even know I was away on vacation, so I don't even know what the meeting is that you're talking about, but there are times that the chair has complete control over that. And if the chair foresees someone bringing up the same topic over and over, they don't have to be recognized.
I understand, yeah. No, that's right, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't think, it wasn't a procedural, like, it wasn't like that they didn't listen to someone who had the right to talk. It was, they invited public input and then didn't follow through in the way that I thought.
I just remember back, maybe it's 10 years ago, a different chair, and there was a person in the audience that 3 or 4 times was bringing up the same subject, didn't get recognized, and then this person went outside when the meeting was over to confront people. So that's, there are times where it's just good to be civil, just like you said.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, we all need a reminder.
yep. Mr. DeCoste, do you have any updates?
I don't.
Okay. Mr. Knox?
No, I don't.
Okay. So my only update is that the Town Administrator Search Committee had its first meeting. We have posted the position for the Town Administrator. It's been posted at the MMA website, the ICMA website. So we're going to, begin getting applications in. The plan of the search committee is to begin screening those applications at the end of the month.
Right.
Unless we get a lot of applications in sooner, then we might adjust that schedule. And then the Master Plan Implementation Committee is preparing to meet. One of the things that I wanted to just ask the board about is we have the Littleton Common Committee. There's 2 members on that committee. They have not met for a number of years. I don't think through any fault of their own. I really look to the board that we need to provide them with some direction. There's been talk through the Master Plan Implementation Committee of maybe involving them for implementation of the Littleton Common Roadmap. And I didn't know how the board wanted to handle that whole roadmap report we have about the common. There's a whole action list
the
of
master
action
plan.
items that aren't really being acted upon. So I didn't know if the board wanted the master plan to meet and then kind of throw around some ideas and then come back to the board, or if the board wanted to give master plan maybe some direction now.
Ideas on how to move forward with the committee?
Just
and the common,
specifically the
or-
Littleton Common Committee, yeah.
I thought the Littleton Common Committee was disbanded by us.
Apparently not.
I'm almost positive, if we go back to the records,
We disbanded it. You
Disbanded.
voted to, because,
because it was like 2014 when the committee was formed, and
Right.
if you go back, there's like 2 meetings, and after that, some people had the wrong idea. They thought they were there only to talk about the beauty of the common, and of course, the committee was meant to be much more deeply involved in what goes on at the common completely as far as businesses and uses of the common and things like that.
right. And I know we had taken a large list of dormant committees when I first was elected.
Yeah, I thought
Paul- Yeah, and we had kind of gotten abolished a lot
I
of
thought this was included in there as well. If it wasn't, it probably should be, because I mean, a lot of that is redundant to what goes on with the master planning committee and others, so.
I agree.
Well, and sorry. Yeah, so that's my next question. Do we want to maybe invite these 2 members to join the Master Plan Implementation Committee?
Well, but there is the Common Revitalization Committee.
Right, which I don't think all the members have been appointed to that yet. I think we have too many committees around the common, so we need to try to figure out how to consolidate them, I think, yeah.
Yeah, we definitely need to have a more pointed approach, a focused approach.
Okay. So I'll confirm the disposition of the Littleton Common Committee. We'll hold the Master Plan Implementation Committee meeting and just have a discussion involving that, and see if the 2 people that we did recently appoint to the Littleton Common Committee maybe want to join Master Plan, and then we'll figure out how the other revitalization committee fits into that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And that's all I have. Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Nothing? Okay. All right, great. So we are running behind. We have a joint meeting with the Finance Committee to discuss budget matters. I know that we also have ONeill Backstage Lounge. They have a request for an extension of premises for outdoor table service. I don't know if we wanted to maybe, I hate to keep FinCom waiting because they've already been waiting, but maybe, is ONeill, are they on?
They are.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see if we want to take it out of order, and then we could have FinCom still present while we're talking about goals. I didn't know how the board felt about that.
I mean, I don't think O'Neill's gonna be anything too, it's not any heavy lifting, really.
Right, okay.
Just
All right, good, so,
make sure Alan's okay with it.
yeah. Alan, do you mind if we do that, if we just hear the application of ONeill Cinemas first, and then we can have FinCom still on the call when we discuss our goals?
Yeah, fine.
Thank you.
Okay, so,
Is that Cheryl?
Mr. O'Neill, if you're able to hear us,
Yes, I'm Dan O'Neill here.
You Dan?
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for taking our time here. I'll just do a brief introduction if that's okay.
Certainly.
Okay. My name's Dan O'Neill, and my family owns and operates ONeill Cinemas at the Point. We're applying for an extended license to offer outside dining and liquor service. We would like to provide an outside dining experience for the backstage lounge and bistro located at the cinema. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we feel that we need to offer this alternative to our in-house dining operations. And I also have with me Chef Robert Donovan, who runs the lounge operations, and he can go through the layout procedures if you'd like to go that route.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Robert Donovan, and like Dan said, we're looking to do service outside also, due to the limited seating that is inside.
Okay.
At this time, we're looking to work with the building inspector for putting up a tent, but also table seating outside in a roped-in area that is designated to a server that can take care of checking IDs and doing regular service as we do inside.
Okay. Excellent. So one of the things I just wanted to ask, so you're asking for permission to do this through November 1st, 2020 in accordance with the governor's order?
Correct.
Did you have any thoughts about applying for a permanent license to have outdoor seating?
Yeah, we were looking to probably do that next year,
Okay,
next summer.
okay. Excellent. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Just quickly, looking at the diagram, your outside seating would be to the left of the door that you enter for the dining area?
Yeah, when facing the door to the left of the backstage lounge,
Okay.
where the sidewalk widens to 12 feet.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Okay,
Madam Chair, just
certainly.
clarification. I don't recall that the other restaurants that took advantage of the state legislation needed to come to us to do this. I thought they just had to go to the building commissioner to make sure everything's done in accordance with those requirements. I don't, if my memory's wrong, but I'm happy to support this in any event, but I'm just not even sure they even need our vote on this, do they?
I
Would we
believe-
be certain of that?
I believe that other establishments did.
Itaka came to us.
Yep, and El
Il Forno
Forno.
come to us?
El Forno
Did
did
they?
Yeah,
as
Il
well.
Forno, I remember voting on Il Forno.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, oh, you know what? That must have been the meeting in July I missed then. I'll bet you that's what it was. Why I don't remember. Okay, well, in any event, I'm in support.
Okay.
Okay, great. All right, excellent. Any,
I do have a question, just
Sure.
For either Chef Robert or for Dan. So where that curb does bump out a bit, is there any plans for any kind of Jersey barriers or bollards or, any kind of temporary, anything to, because there's a crosswalk there. I just don't want anybody jumping the curb or anything like that and having a bunch of seats, any.
Yeah, no, we were looking to rope off the area for the patrons, but as far as Jersey barriers and stuff like that, we weren't. I've been monitoring that area a lot in the last month, and I mean, the speed limit's only 5 miles an hour, and it's a high traffic area, I feel. And that's why I would choose that area too. if we made it a more permanent thing, then possibly, we could look at doing something that was more, sturdy, that could, potentially do some help in case of an accident.
Yeah, I guess on a temporary basis, I'd be okay with, some kind of roping off or something like that. If you put a tent up, obviously, there's a big visual clue that there's something in the way. But having lived through an incident in a school parking lot where a vehicle jumped the curb and wiped out a bunch of young children, I just looking at the way it's laid out with the, it's concrete curbing, not granite curbing, and there is a curb cut for the crosswalk, so there's a ramp there. I have some safety concerns, and I know that the police and fire, everybody else has signed off on it, but I think it's a great idea. I want you guys to be able to do it. I don't necessarily want to put any hurdles, additional financial burdens in front of you, but I hope that the safety of your patrons is something that is in consideration there.
So what would be the buffer area between the traffic flow and the actual seating? And how many feet would there be?
We're looking at 24 seats in total.
No, I meant in space between the actual seating and where the traffic flow would be in the parking lot.
Yeah, we're about 2 feet in on to the sidewalk. 2 to 2.5 feet in from the sidewalk in is where we start the seating, so from the curb. So then, I don't know, very little people come all the way up to the curb in that area, unlike where it protrudes in front of the building. So I would say a good 3 to 4 feet is the buffer zone that you're looking for.
Okay. I wonder if there's a way to divert traffic so they're not using that egress and access part of the parking lot, that part of the driveway?
Where the drop-off zone is you're talking about?
Yeah.
So from that drop-off zone to where we're setting up is actually close to about 20 to 25 feet. We're setting up in front of the half wall, if you would, on the other side of the entranceway to the kitchen.
Okay.
The planters, are those planters there, or?
Yeah, the high planters are like 4 feet high.
Yeah.
All right.
So there's a lot of curb and sidewalk in between.
Correct. Yeah, whoever's highlighting it,
All right, perfect.
it's actually not even, it's up from that.
Okay.
Okay, all right, great. Any more questions or comments from the board?
No problem here.
No, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
You ready for a motion, Madam Chair?
Please.
Okay, I'll move that the select board vote to approve the request of ONeill Backstage Lounge to extend services to outside dining service to November 1st, 2020, conditioned upon the submission, which includes the requirements in accordance with the governor's order of June 2020 and the 2015 ABCC guidelines.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, roll call vote. Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
I'm going to vote for this, but I do, Dan, I just want to stress that I have some safety concerns there, and I hope that there, whatever you can do to mitigate those concerns, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Mr. Knox?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Thank you very much. So the motion is approved as written, and Mr. DeCoste's reservations are noted. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will look into that with Key Point Partners as well, as far as some safety.
Sounds good. I know a lot of, like Woburn and Arlington, they've done these space places where they've actually put seating out in parking spaces, and they've done some sort of barriers, whether it be like the barricades, like the line the Boston Marathon, or Jersey barriers, or just something a little more substantial than roping it off.
Okay, we'll talk to the shopping center as well to see if they can help us with that, so.
Good luck.
We will definitely look into that.
Appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, appreciate it.
Okay, so now we are on to our joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Director of Budget and Finance. to discuss the fiscal year budget adjustments and special town meeting warrant. Is your board present, Alan?
We are.
Okay, excellent. All right, great. So I'm going to actually turn it over, I think, to Cheryl Herrick-Stella to begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as you all recall, back in the spring, when you went through the exercise of cutting about $1 million out of the FY21 budget, at that time, both boards had discussed revisiting those cuts to see if further cuts were needed or if any potential restorations could happen during special town meeting. As we stand from a financial standpoint today, 2 months into the fiscal year, things are relatively positive. We do have 2 of our state aid numbers that came in higher than we had initially projected. Our revenues are about on track with where we were last year, and our expenditures are lower than they were compared to last year thus far. So at this time, in the memo that was sent out to both the Select Board and the Finance Committee, there were some operating requests that were requested to discussion for potential restoration. They were for positions that were non-benefit eligible and under $10,000. One of them is the EHS admin assistant, request for $5,760 to increase their hours by 4.5. The other 2 were related to the town clerk. One for the elections, the restoration of the $3,000, which was discussed as well in the spring, and the assistant town clerk increasing her hours by 5 hours, which is a budget restoration request of $5,000. In addition, there are 3 capital requests that I'm aware of at this time for special town meeting. I believe 2 of them you both boards are aware of. Chris Stoddard had met last week to the week before to discuss the high school traffic project, traffic signal project, as well as the roll-off truck. And then the third is the police station repair.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Do we have any questions or comments? We'll start with the Select Board first.
Well, pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
None for me.
Alan, any questions or comments from your committee?
My comment is that I think it's reasonable. It's still taking a conservative approach, but it's reasonable to do those 3 positions, bringing especially with the elections and town clerk. So I have no problem with that. The capital requests are straightforward. I'm really, I don't know what's going to happen with the police station repairs, but we'll deal with that if they go for alternate 1 or 2 at another time. That's my comment. Gary?
I think, right off at it, Alan, I would agree with you. I think these are still conservative. I really hope we have even better news going into the next quarter, and into next year. But yeah, we're not talking about really bringing in new staff. This is more increase in current staff, so that in itself is really not too much of a cost burden. Though I do recognize that eventually we're going to need to get to the point where we need to fulfill some of these personnel requests, hopefully in the spring.
Thanks. Betsy, you have anything?
Yeah, I actually have a couple questions. One is, we're talking about doing this, but the spending freeze is still on, right?
That's correct.
And are there areas that the spending freeze are affecting that we should also be looking at if we're spending more money?
I mean, certainly there are areas that you could look at. I know that the library specifically has asked to expend some money to do some programming, which at this point, has not been allowed. Certainly some training for staff has been requested that given the current spending freeze has not been allowed. So you could consider in as well to lift some of the spending freeze if you felt comfortable at this time.
I guess I would just want to know what we're saying no to besides the things that you just said. If there are other things that we feel are warranted, that would just be my question, because I don't know what those would be at this point.
Yeah, I would say it's mainly been training and professional development that we've said no to. And like I said, the programming for the library and some of those materials.
So people are still asking, and is there a process to say no, or is it just the policy is no, and so there's no discussion? Or is there a possibility if somebody has professional training that really does make sense that there's a process to get that done?
Yep, there's absolutely a process. They're still, asking, and if it's training that's a requirement of their job, i.e. some license or something to that extent, that is not affected by the spending freeze. If it's something outside of that and they have a rationale and a reasoning behind that, then I bring that forward to the chair and vice chair for weigh-in on that.
Okay, all right, that makes sense then. And then the other question I had was in one of the documents you sent out, you said that the transfer station revenues, the stickers were down $40,000. What percentage of the total sticker number is $40,000? Actually, I was flabbergasted by that number. And do we know why that is? I mean, $40,000 worth of people are not taking their trash to the dump, or maybe they're getting us service instead or something, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can certainly ask Chris if he has insight into that, and I can let you know what the percentage is that in a minute here.
It's a lot. I think it's like 260, isn't it? Like what we usually.
That was the total.
Those are my questions, but I would like to hear what the percentage is, because that amazes me. I don't know what their normal revenue is from stickers.
Yeah, let me just pull that up.
How recent are those numbers too, Cheryl? Because I'll bet that's picked up recently on the stickers.
Yeah, so that was through the end of August.
Oh, so that's recent.
not too far away.
No.
No.
Because early on, a lot of people were, getting dumpsters and doing the big clean out. They didn't need the, the town service, so that's kind of passed by.
Right.
Okay.
What? I think she's doing that math to try to.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just doing that right now.
No worries.
Maybe we can get Nick's son back and he can do it. He can do that math.
So it's about 20%.
Okay. Well, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That's it.
That's all I
Howard, do you have any questions?
No, I think that it's a great job Joe's doing, given the fact that we've got uncertainties on every level. Uncertainties of the projections, state aid, that's uncertainties for actual expenses, ultimate expenses, what income we're gonna have. So I think it's great. It's an incremental project at this point, and you just gotta go step at a time and be as conservative as she said, as she's been. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and I don't have any suggestions for any correction or amendment or modification.
Thank you. Tyler?
Yeah, no, I don't really have any specific questions either. I mean, again, it's a measured conservative approach, and, I wouldn't have thought to ask that each question, but it was a great one about just making sure that we have a process for folks to raise up other critical things that may be affected by the spending freeze. So as long as we're considering that as a process for it, I'm good.
Thank you. Madam Chair?
All right, great. Thank you. Mr. DeCoste?
Cheryl, I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this question for me, so I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but we had, outside of the back of this building, we had a problem with the sewer line, and I know that was an emergency, and we had to pay for that. Which funds do we go after in that situation? Is that all squared away? That's all been paid out? And So the numbers that we have reflect the contractor being paid and all that being all squared away?
That's correct, Selectman DeCosta. In fact, that was something that I reached out to the state on because one of the reasons why we had the issues was because of lack of use, because the buildings did not have the individuals in them, i.e. the school and town hall, due to the kind of shutdown and remote working. And so I made that case to the state, and they're allowing us to use CARES funding to pay for that.
Appreciate you not using the word flow.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Great.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I'll just add that I think this, the information and the news is cautiously good. The approach we're taking, I'll echo what everyone else has said. I think we're doing the right, prudent thing by, taking these in baby steps, but these are the right moves to make right now. And especially appreciate Cheryl's very cogent analysis and memos on the subject.
Excellent.
And her proactive approach to going after CARES funds when there's the opportunity to do so. Thank you for that, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
Great. Yeah, excellent work. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Mr. Layton's, the special town meeting warrant?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I do think that we should probably, if you don't want to vote now, you can wait to vote when you review the warrant articles. Either way is fine with me, but, obviously at some point need to be a vote.
Oh, is there a motion here somewhere?
Yeah, it's conjoined with the special town meeting warrant, though, so that's why I didn't, I mean, we could take a separate vote. It doesn't matter to me.
Why don't we take a vote now?
Okay.
Okay, so that was under topic 6 then, is it?
It's under 4.
Well, there's no motion on 4.
Oh,
Right, under the joint meeting, there was discussion dependent, not knowing where we were
oh,
gonna
okay.
come, so.
I thought I saw a motion under 4.
But if you looked at 6, they are included if we insert those articles under 6B, right?
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
So do we want to take that vote now? Is there something more we
redundant.
need to discuss?
I think it's redundant.
As far as the articles go?
What's on, Mr. Layden, what's under 4 that I'm looking at?
You mean under the packet as far as 4?
Yeah.
That was just the joint meeting. I mean, the board could vote to submit to the warrant the amendments to the FY21 budget as proposed by the finance director.
Right.
Referencing that memo.
Right.
And then what we do, a second vote on to add the rest of the warrant articles later, Joe? Is that what you're assuming?
Yes. So
Okay.
include both the capital and the and then the amendments to the FY21 budget as drafted by the finance director.
Okay, then I'll, if you'd like, Madam Chair, I'll say I'll move that the select board vote to insert the budget amendments dealing with the positions and the capital requests as outlined in the finance director's memo for the October 17, 2020 special town meeting warrant.
Second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Select Board, all those in favor, roll call vote. Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Favor.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. So the motion is approved as recited by Mr. Glavy. And I don't know, Mr. McCray, if you want to, committee going to take a vote on it?
We're certainly, we'll vote on the same motion. Roll call vote, Gary Wilson,
Yes.
and Alan Bell,
yes.
Tyler Gray,
Alan Gray, yes.
Betsy Boland,
Betsy Bowens, yes.
Alan McRae is a yes, it's approved.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Okay, so now, You want to lead us off on this, Mr. Layden?
Sure thing, Madam Chair. So if both you and the Finance, both the Select Board and Finance Committee don't mind, I'm just going to share screen as far as the warrant. So this draft of the warrant, which was submitted to the board, I realized once I put it up that hadn't sent the same thing to the Finance Committee. So my apologies on that. Basically, this draft has been reviewed earlier this morning with a conference call with Town Council, as well as input through the day with Cheryl, and in communication with some other departments. To sort of arrive at some of this final language. We will also have, towards the end of the warrant, there is an article on 5G that Town Council should probably be here already if he isn't elevated to be a participant. So can basically go right through these. They're pretty straightforward. Article B is paying prior year bills, so we have a few bills that came in after the close of the books for the FY20 bill, so we'll have those itemized once we prepare the town meeting report. For Article C, this is what we basically just voted for those items that Cheryl identified in her memo. And then same thing with Article D. These are the capital items that were also within Cheryl's memo. Coming in with Article E, I just have to fill in the highlighted amount, but this is an article proposed by the Littleton Community Television Advisory Committee to allow them to do improvements over at the new library, as well as $10,000, and that's for the amount of $40,000, and then $10,000 to use for legal expenses associated with negotiating a new cable license fee with Comcast as well as Verizon. Article F is an article to rescind the vote and transfer of funds for Mill Pond dredging, basically to put them back into the Spectacle Pond Cell Tower Clean Lakes Fund for reuse at a future date. Article G is
Can you go back to Article F? Does that mean that we're stopping the process as far as dredging?
This is at the request of Light and Water, and specifically for Clean Lakes. They asked to rescind this vote, the $68,550 from the May 2018 annual town meeting. So I believe that was for dredging. I do not know the status of that.
Can we hold off on that? I mean, I want them to explain why
I
this.
literally got phone calls today about the dredging of Mill Pond.
Okay.
When is this gonna happen? The people, all the time, people
Okay.
are asking about that, especially now, because the nitrates are high, and it stinks down there.
Okay. So I can make sure
Well, I was going to add, Madam Chair and Joe, if you indulge me, the norm has been, we obviously get the financial articles bubble up to us from the finance department through the administrator, et cetera. Articles that board members have been involved with, we're updated on, but a lot of these other committees that are requesting things, whether it's the LCTV or the Mill Pond that was just mentioned, a couple other ones coming up, we really should have get some sort of presentation or request before being just asked to
Put on a warrant.
put them on the warrant. That had been practiced before. I'm not going to suggest we hold up necessarily this unless we jeopardize any deadlines, but we really should be getting presentations on any of the appointed committees under us that's looking to add an article on, just so the townspeople can hear the discussion and and get get an idea of what the article's about.
Right.
I agree.
So thank,
And, yeah, and that was one of the things for the next meeting on the 14th, was planning on doing. So for example, PMBC talking about the police station, why is that amount? Planning board staff talking about the others. So
Okay.
that is things that for the next meeting on the
If you got that
14th
plan,
was.
then I would just suggest that, right off the bat, E and F, suggest that they should have that be Article H, the CPC, same type of thing. Obviously, the articles we're involved with, we can address internally, whether it's One Road or whatever else.
And that's a good point, because, for example, CPC isn't meeting until tomorrow night. So they won't have their final language, they're gonna submit it, and then the idea would be on the 14th to then have them speak to the articles that, they're submitting.
Gotcha. All right, so that was already in your plans?
Yep.
But to Paul's point, though.
Knew you were smart, Joe. Checking, that's all.
But to your point, Paul, like the police station, the PMBC coming before us, we all know that there's money needed for the police station. We've moved that money,
Right.
we've known it's coming. As far as rescinding the vote for the dredging of Mill Pond, that's a surprise. I thought this was something we were waiting for. We were trying to find out where the tillings were gonna go and the silt, and so
Right.
this is something that's been a work in progress for some
Yeah,
time,
we
and we've all
can't
been
lose
involved.
track of the chain of command here, really. We're happy to point all these folks to go off and do work, but essentially, their procedure should be to emanate any suggestions up to us, rather than just
Yeah, but even the
read it on the warrant.
the LCTV warrant, Article E, it was my understanding that we were wiring the library for sound, and that was part of frankly, the 15 million number, the
Yeah.
price tag. We were going to have spaces in there that were, spaces in there that were capable of holding meetings. So this is
How long have
also
some
a
of these
surprise for
articles
me.
been hanging around? These just come in recently, or have they been in the administrator's office for a while?
I'd probably say for the last 2 weeks. So it's been
Okay.
something that, because the warrant hasn't closed yet, these are things that people have been bringing to my attention as far as things that need to be submitted to the warrant. So then, once it closes, then can proceed with bringing things in front of the board, and then approving or not, or asking for justification. So.
okay. All right, you want to continue, Mr. Layden?
Yep, just trying to get back to where it was.
Gee.
Yeah, once I stopped screen sharing, I then lost where it was.
Page 46?
No, there we
On
go.
that one.
There we go. Okay, and then just bring this back up. Similarly, like for any of these, having people like Town Treasurer Steve Venuti talking about this is appropriation of bond and bank appropriation note excess premiums, basically identifying various actions on those. CPC is something that they are meeting to finalize their articles tomorrow night. So once they finalize that, we'll be able to put those in with the appropriate dollar amounts, and also additional detail. Article I, which is acquisition of the 119 to Hattawan. This is something that's been in the works for number of years on the town side, but a lot of momentum has occurred over the last couple of weeks as we've gotten news that can't share yet, of course, but then also consideration as far as a final request to CPC, where that will be considered tomorrow to make up any gap between purchase price and other funds, as well as potential grant funds. and also making sure that communicating with town council as far as the purpose, because there are purposes in the acquisition such as affordable housing, such as potential park as well as open space. Article J was something that was discussed at a 4:30 Personnel Board meeting, looking at some amendments to the Personnel Board, the Personnel Bylaw as it relates to holiday pay, some language that's proposed in bold here to clarify prorating of holiday pay, as well as then changes for some language working out of classification, and then amending the schedules to reflect change in the positions of the assistant treasurer and HR administrator into a separate assistant treasurer position and HR manager, as well as adding the title of assistant director of finance and budget to the town treasurer. And then the last item on that personnel board is to make some changes to the pay grades as a incremental step to implementing minimum wage, so that we're not doing it all in one swoop, that we're changing our salaries that are below minimum wage to then gradually raise them up to reduce the impact on our ability to provide services. The next set of articles is something that the water commissioners are still, and light and water department are still working on, as far as borrowing for, or allocating funds for the Littleton Common Smart Sewer Design and Construction Funding. That's in K. We have L, in case it's needed. Hopefully we don't, especially with our vote tonight on the language from Senator Eldridge. But in case we did need to resubmit, town council recommended including Littleton Sewer Home Rule petition again, just because if the legislature doesn't act on it, we don't want to delay once they open up session again, in case time runs out on the current home rule petition that was already approved 2 years ago.
So we may just end up withdrawing that article if not necessary, correct?
Correct, or passing over depending on when we find out.
Right.
Also, the water commissioners looking at the Whitcomb Ave property. Basically identifying parcels. And then final water commissioner's article is for some funding associated with PFAS. Sorry, the last one, water commissioners, amends prior votes on borrowing. From that article, we get into, as the board previously discussed with the fire chief, originally looking at getting the third ambulance. We talked about leasing that ambulance, and it was discussed that it would be more advantageous to borrow that. So this article has been modified to reflect borrowing rather than lease. And then we get into Article Q, which is Select Board and Planning Board. This is something that it's my understanding has been looked at from a number of departments over the last couple of years, but then working with the planning board, town council has basically pulled this together over the last couple weeks. There is a change in what was sent to the board, where I believe the version on Thursday that you received for your packet identified the light and water as being the responsible permit granting authority within the town's layout, within roadways. They're proposing that it be the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board. Need to change that.
Do we have any kind of explanatory memo about what this is all about, or you're saying right now is that the extent of it?
We can do maybe one better. We do have attorney Chris Heap on the Zoom call.
Well, not to discourage Chris, but I think a memo in advance, if anything, will be an ask to adopt as a minimum. I mean, you just went over the ambulance article. That's the process that I think these really ought to follow and historically have. In advance of seeing the article, the department head came in, made the case, we had a discussion, and now when we see it, it's not news.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of this stuff is detailed stuff, and it's like, where's it coming from? What does it mean?
Madam Chair, we do have Chris on. He may be able to speak to where some of the history is on this.
Sure.
Sure. Hello, everybody, and I apologize for not having a written memo to you in your packet.
Well, it isn't all on you, you know, it doesn't have to fall all on you, Joe, it's just, you know, procedure, all the various departments, they should be prepared to, you know, to back up their request with a memo, or if they really want to see us put something on the warrant, all of them ought to have a representative here at the Zoom meeting to be able to speak to them, too.
Sure, that's fair. So we town council were asked to help prepare a new bylaw regulating 5G antenna installations a while back. We were asked this by the planning board, who I think identified the need to regulate this because we think it's the planning board thinks, and I think I agree, that it's sort of a hole in our existing zoning bylaw that we needed to patch a little bit. This was also worked on somewhat by the Littleton Electric Light Department, which has some stake in this area as well, given that a lot of these installations are likely going to be placed on LELD's light poles within the right-of-way. So what we're talking about here is what we're seeing more and more across the Commonwealth is that lots and lots of telecommunications providers are moving away from the old 100-foot tall cell towers with multiple providers on it, and are looking more and more to install very small antennas in the right-of-way, often on utility poles. This is something we need to address in the form of a new bylaw, as the zoning bylaw does not usually apply to the town's right-of-way. Roads are typically exempt from zoning regulation. So if we're going to regulate these, we need to do it in a slightly different way. So what we did was drafted a bylaw that really actually drafted two bylaws. The warrant article that you have in front of you has one component that would adopt a new general bylaw, which would govern installations within the town's right-of-way. That's permissible as long as it's not zoning. And we also adopt a new zoning bylaw to regulate all of the 5G antenna installations that somebody wants to put in. And the way, now this sort of brings the Board of Selectmen and the Select Board into this in a sort of unusual way, in that the board, as in its capacity as road commissioners, has jurisdiction over the right-of-way. So the way the bylaw is currently structured is LELD will approve any proposed installations that are going to go on LELD utility poles. The Board of Selectmen will approve any installations that are proposed to go within the right-of-way on anything that LELD doesn't own, and anything that's proposed outside of the right-of-way will need to go to the planning board for a special permit. So that's what the bylaw will do, and why we try to structure it that way.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Certainly.
I went to a couple of meetings early last summer. They had to do with 5G. It was at the Light and Water Department. And one of the things that was brought up is that more and more when you have new developments, everything is underground. Any idea what happens to 5G if you don't have any telephone poles?
You cut out, I think it's just my internet problem, Mr. Joe. Can you repeat my question? I missed, I think, a chunk of it.
This is a very, very general question. If my understanding from the summertime was that the 5G would have to go on a number of telephone poles, and actually that's not attractive, but that's another subject. But the topic was brought up is that with all the new developments we have in town that are all underground utilities, how do you get 5G to go down the street with no telephone poles?
That's a good question. Absent any poles, the providers are gonna need to look for other places to put them. I think rooftops will continue to be a good site for this kind of use. It's, I suppose, possible that a provider could ask to put in a new pole of its own. I think that's clearly something that we wouldn't be in favor of. But I think rooftops and other places is where they would have to look.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? No? Okay, great.
I guess my only question is, I don't know if Nick's still on, Joe, if you can tell. I assume, just like if we wanted to go on a Verizon pole or some other utilities pole, you pay a lease. I assume that there would be some sort of, Chris, maybe you can answer this, LELD would be able to charge some sort of a lease to Verizon or Comcast or T-Mobile or whomever wanted to place their wireless network over our poles.
Yes, we can certainly, well, I didn't mean to speak for Nick, he's on, but yes, the town and/or LELD can collect rent for the use of its poles or the use of its right-of-way. There is recent federal telecommunications law that limits the amount we can collect to I can't tell you the precise amount, but the FCC has sort of set a range as to what it considers a reasonable licensing fee to sort of rein in towns that might have tried to push the limit on what it could get for rent. So there's some bounds on what we can collect, but we can certainly charge.
Because in all likelihood, if the carriers are all getting away from the big towers and, you know, the rooftop units and all that kind of stuff, they're still gonna have that revenue.
Yeah.
So we can get a piece of that pie by, and believe me, they charge, if Verizon owns a pole and Comcast or any other utility wants to get on it, they charge them. And you need to, it's highway robbery. I'm glad the FCC has stepped in, but, all right. Just wanted to make sure. I don't doubt that our commissioners or Nick are on top of this, but just want to make sure that people are aware that we do have an opportunity for some revenue generation.
And that's one other thing that I didn't mention is that LELD has developed detailed guidelines on what these should look like and how they should be installed. Good. And really regulating every aspect of how they want these things to look. And the bylaw incorporates by reference, we try to keep the bylaw short. The bylaw just incorporates by reference everything, all the work LELD has done to figure out how to regulate this already.
All right, great. Any other
Madam
questions?
Chair, this is Betsy. Can I ask a question as well?
Absolutely.
So my question is, currently some of the cell tower funds that we get in are set aside for specific purposes. And if those funds are gonna go away and these are gonna replace them, should we be looking at similar designations for these funds? That probably is a question more for the select board than Chris.
Well, it's a question that needs to be asked because we do cell tower funds do a lot for the town.
Right.
That's why I raised it.
5G eventually is going to do away with that. So the town needs to be cognizant of that and start looking to see where they can get money for 5G to replace the cell tower funds.
So,
It's not an easy issue. I think probably deserves more consideration than it's been given so far.
I think LELD has given it consideration, Alan, and I'm not going to speak for them, but I'm pretty sure the commissioners, and I know that Commissioner Pagasic, this is right in his sweet spot. This is, I'm sure that we will come out on the right end of.
Well, I'm sure that they're looking at the funds, but they're looking at them to go to LDWT,
Right, they're gonna come to the.
not to the town or the agencies that we spend the cell tower funds for.
Right,
Yeah, there should be some way that we can marry them up. I see what you're saying.
yeah.
and just in a prior life, when used to handle applications from cell tower companies, in at least when it was reviewing, say, antenna swap outs at existing facilities. Existing facilities aren't going to be going away. They're first going to be basically, they're still going to be the back end, because you can't effectively cover a large amount of area by running small sites along rights of way. It's going to be concentrated, say, in the town common area, where you could have higher congregation period within commercial areas. I don't think we have to worry about our revenue going away from our cell tower sites, but it would be an interesting way of sort of looking at how, say, revenue could be supplemented for other purposes, improvements, district improvements that maybe could be a little bit more creative and work with, light and water as far as using those funds.
But I think it is true, Joe, that the value of the existing leases on each of the locations that we have right now, when those leases come due for renewal, if Verizon has 5G all over the town, and they're paying for those cell towers, they're gonna want to try to get some back too. So they're gonna negotiate a lower lease.
Potentially.
So, I think there's only so much in the pot.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be spread out over the different, mechanisms for broadcasting the signal. So I think it's a larger conversation. I do think that
Right.
LELWD has had many of those conversations, but it's something that, to Alan's point, and to, from our perspective, we need to be aware of. We need to be keeping an eye on it and making sure that those vehicles that we're using currently to fund, buying open space or what have you, or funding CPC, remain intact at a sustainable level.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
If I may, Chair.
Say no.
Yeah, it also made me think of another point, that it seems like we're trying to get away from archaic telephone poles, right? They're bad they just look, the look of them. And it does appear that a lot of these new communities are putting them underground. And I don't know if there's been talk in the center of town, or when we start digging up these roads and putting in are we moving those under as well? We're going to have to be careful, because we don't ever want it to be a situation where the developer isn't going to put them underground because there's money to be made by having these structures above ground. I just don't know how that whole part plays out either. And what's the process when a developer is, deciding to put all their utilities underground as opposed to above ground? Now there might be some discussion somewhere where, hey, let's put this above ground. We can make a few bucks by doing it that way. So,
Gary, the underground pipes, if you will, are also leased. Those are also considered rights of way. So no matter where the cable is running, they're going to be paying somebody for those runs. So if it's pipes underground, they're still going to pay. And that conversation came up when they were digging up around the common along Meeting House. We had that conversation with the Light and Water folks. And Joe, you were on the board at the time. And we met out there because we were trying to figure out if we had another opportunity to put a doghouse, which is an above ground transformer and all that kind of stuff. And so we were out there trying to take a look at what would be okay to do when Light Tower was coming through, putting in fiber optics. And at that point in time, we asked, is there an opportunity for us to put an extra pipe in that we might be able to lease out to get some revenue from the next big thing? And frankly, LELD does a great job of what they do. And being in New England, if you have a power outage and it's underground in the middle of March and it's below zero, I think LELD would argue that they're better off up on a pole trying to fix the power outage than they are trying to get underground and open the ground and that kind of thing. So I hear you, but I'm not sure it's going to be something that's going to change all that, at least not in our lifetime.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? So we'll further discussion on that. Okay.
So So then following that article, and this is for after, still within the board's meeting tonight, we'll have a discussion on leash bylaw. And then after that is the placeholder articles for roadway acceptance for the 4 developments. Those are things that the public hearing is scheduled for later on in September, and they're still finalizing some final edits on the as-built plans with planning. And then the last 2 are part of the Durkee and then K Estates developments. There was open space that, along with acceptance of those roadways, would be accepting those open space parcels, one for open space, the other for general municipal purposes. Looking at all the articles, we have 5 articles that the water commissioners are looking at submitting. We have about 4 from departments, LCTV, Clean Lakes, Finance Department, as well as CPC. And then the remaining have the select board in some capacity, either as co-sponsor or sponsor, say personnel or those. That essentially is all the feedback that from departments as well as town council and articles that we need for special town meeting. And again, sorry for causing maybe additional confusion into the process as far as lining people up to come to speak after the warrant closes as opposed to before. But that's essentially what we'd be looking at for the draft warrant. So not knowing exactly the practice of the board, understanding that water commissioners, i.e. The general manager for Littleton, Light and Electric and Light and Water Department is able to forward on those articles so that they can be considered onto the warrant, and then the others had been the request of the departments. What would be the process for, say, finalizing these from the board from a vote perspective as far as the warrant ends up closing on the 10th? That then lines up for us to review the final warrant submissions for inclusion on the warrant on the 14th, to then the timeline would be then reviewing the final language and the reports the following week at the 21st, for then going to the publisher middle of that week.
Not sure.
So what we ordinarily do, Madam Chair, if you don't mind,
No, not at all.
I mean, I get we have a deadline of the 10th, so obviously we can't, can't mess with that, but ordinarily, any of these articles would go through a couple of, and this happened in the spring too, as we get comfortable with them, we add them in batches, the non-controversial ones first, the ones generated by ourselves, the one we're familiar with, fine, and then as there's some that are held off a little bit until the numbers are, they're dependent on some determination of a number that isn't known yet. And any outside group, whether they're our own appointees or another board asking of it, unless they generally come in and make a pitch on behalf of it before we put it on the warrant. Now, I guess we're gonna have to do that backwards here and put them on the warrant now, but everybody ought to be invited to come and make a presentation. Some of them will just be pro forma, but it's kind of, it's not very effective here to have language in front of us and not have the people who are seeking it available to answer the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mr. Layton, if I just ask one question on Article T, the donation of land Durkee Farm Estates?
Yes.
That isn't the farmhouse and the barn. That was also going to be donated to the town by the developer.
No.
These are separate parcels?
There's two separate parcels, and so you have parcels A and B used for open space, parcels C, D, and E used for conservation or recreation purposes.
Okay.
So I can get more specificity as far as, I do recall, that I believe there was an offer as far as using one for affordable housing purposes. This language came out of the special permit for the planning board, so we'd have to just refer back to that decision to see how that was worded in their special permit.
Okay.
The HCA, I believe, was then the K parcel, because that we have as for general municipal purposes.
Right. Yeah, it was 5 acres, the farmhouse and the barn were going to be donated.
So that at least looks like that would be parcel B. So can look for more specifics on
Right.
that.
I just want to make sure that,
Looks like it's not great company language. I think at a minimum, we need a memo from the planning board on, just as we would for any board, explaining what their articles are asking for and telling us what's in it, what's not in it, and whether tomorrow or one of their board members available, ideally would have been good tonight, but next Monday, I guess, to, go over it with us.
right. Yeah, I mean, just other situations that we've come into where the language just isn't exact.
Yep.
Have created
I
problems down
certainly
the
want to see a
road.
plot plan. too.
Exactly.
That's-
What's A, what's B, what's C?
Yeah.
I don't know what
Absolutely.
this-
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
We like pictures.
Good point to bring up.
yeah. Okay.
So we basically have to either remove these or vote them in.
So,
There's some, like, these are being requested, or on these, it's written from the planning board, from the select board as far as the acceptance of the open space. Same thing for the road acceptance. We'll be having that layout hearing, and then result of that is then a request for acceptance for that. So, essentially answering your question, I have the list of, outside of the water commissioners articles, the other articles which then would be request to be placed on the warrant with, then on the 14th, the board reviewing and receiving presentations from essentially the sponsors.
oh, today's the 8th, yeah. So that, I guess that was going to be my question. Do we need to vote this tonight, or can we wait till we get those presentations?
Closes tomorrow?
The warrant closes on at noon on Thursday.
Okay. All right.
I guess we should vote them, to put them on, but we ought to, in the memo that goes out to the people requesting articles, inviting them to come in on Monday and to supply us in advance with the memo explaining their article, that we reserve the right to remove them if we're not,
Absolutely.
that's the only
Conditionally.
action we have to do.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yep. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Okay,
Make it all conditional.
yep.
Yep.
All right, good. Okay,
So at this point, does Paul make a motion that we do accept these conditionally?
That would be, to place them on the
Yeah,
warrant.
motion here, if you want me to read it.
Yep.
And I'll put in the word conditionally, if that's what the board would prefer.
Paul, I'd recommend one additional statement just to say, with final approval for language recommended by town council.
But whatever language you feel, obviously Joe's language should be in there, but whether it's conditional or subject to removal, whatever you feel is adequate.
We were, in the past, if council has seen fit to change the language, I don't think we've needed to include that in the authorizing language vote to do that, but if you want it in there, I'll work it in there.
okay.
So we take a stab at it, then I'll move that the board vote to insert conditionally the following articles, which would be articles, what are they, A through,
You.
help me out there, Joe.
You.
A through Q?
U, as in uniform.
U. Okay, thank you. Articles A through U on this October 17th, 2020 special town meeting warrant, subject to language review language review by town council.
Second.
Motion's been made and
Just dangling
seconded.
out
Any
there.
further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Knox? Mr. DeCoste?
Yeah.
Mr. Nordhaus? Mr.
Yes.
Glavy?
Yes?
And Cindy Napoli is yes. Okay, great, thank you. Okay.
Heavy swallow.
Well, my apologies. When I was reviewing the list, I probably should have asked a little bit more specifics as far as recommendations on how to handle, so.
We moved the meeting up. This is
No,
not a
we're-
normal
yeah.
cycle. I
Don't
would
worry
not.
about it, Joe. It's fine. Do we still have FinCom?
We do still have them on the Zoom call.
Okay. Do we need,
Do you want them there for any of the goal stuff?
yeah, do we want them there for goals?
I like their input.
Maybe we should start with the financial goals.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would like to go ahead and adjourn our portion of the meeting. We will probably take up those articles, recommendations at a future meeting of ours. But I will formally adjourn, so those who need to leave can. Everybody who wants to stay and listen, please do. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Betsy?
So moved.
Second?
Betsy.
Tyler?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the FinCom meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Tyler?
Aye.
Aye.
Alan Bell?
Aye.
Tom Burrell?
Aye.
Gary Wilson?
Aye.
Betsy Bowley?
Yes, sir.
Alan McGrath. We are adjourned. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
All right, you're welcome, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So we did that. Do we want to go back now and talk about goals?
Depends how long it takes. I don't want to be criticized for being the anchor.
Well, I think we're past that ship sailed, Chuck. Okay, so we have our goals. This is actually the revised version of the matrix that implemented, incorporated comments made during our initial goals meeting. So I don't know if everyone's had a chance to look at this, if there's any comments or suggested changes, additions.
Madam Chair, matches up with my recollection of things. It's easy to navigate to. I just, I'm not sure what our goal with goals is tonight, but looking at it in toto is a little daunting because I'm not sure where to begin tonight, but I wonder whether we should just start putting it on individual members to bring up, do it on a topic by topic basis, over the next few meetings. I don't know what we can, what we're specifically looking to accomplish tonight, but, yeah, I'm on board with all these goals.
Right.
So I wonder, go ahead.
No, yeah, so basically, it's just seeing if we've reviewed the goals, we accept the goals, there's no changes to the matrix by any members of the board.
I have two comments.
Okay.
One was immediately or soon after the goals, we had a joint meeting with the planning board and discussed forming some working group to talk about planning, zoning, moving
yeah,
forward, which I thought was a great idea.
Right.
And we're all swamped.
Right.
Perhaps we can take that one up after town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And, because I think that was a really good idea. There were a lot of interesting, that was a fascinating discussion, which, to my mind, definitely seemed fruitful.
Okay, yep,
And the other one was the agriculture and conservation goal that is in here wasn't what I put down.
oh. Where are you?
So, I had a goal to reconvene the Aglands working group and get it moving again.
Open space.
And I thought that was an important priority. And so what's on there now is just sort of general, work with Ag in Littleton.
Right, So the working group is still active. Paul and I are the liaisons to the working group. And I did follow up with Jamie Cruz about the group, and she said, basically, they're busy right now farming, doing their, agging. So, that's why there's nothing that's been going on with that group now. So how do you want to change that language, Matthew?
I want to, have some next steps and deliverables for the group, I would say.
Okay.
I think there were a couple things we talked about. One of them was the lease on the orchard. That was one of their charges. I'm not, yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of put that down under my goals, continue working
Okay.
with AgCom, explore expansion and use of NAGOG farm and educational programs.
And, yeah.
So we can move that. Because I think in the AgCom mission statement, there's a number of initiatives that they can undertake, yeah.
And I think that was, and we discussed, I think, a little bit too, that mission, well, I mean, we want, another item was following up on boards and committees that were defunct, or like, I think we talked about it earlier about merging MPIC and the common committees and so
Right.
forth. I don't see the ag stuff happening regularly. I don't see minutes and meetings on the website.
Right.
I understand how busy farmers are.
Right.
But I know that they all go to the Farm Bureau meetings every month. They make
Right.
those, so.
Right. So one of the things that I've learned, basically, really over the past month, with talking to different committees, like the Cultural Council, the Sustainability Committee, is basically they're looking for support from the Select Board. They're looking for funding.
Direction.
They're looking for direction, exactly. And so we're trying, I think we've made improvements from last year to be, to kind of bridge those relationships with those groups, and certainly there's more room for improvement.
Yeah.
Certainly, funding's a big piece of it. The Cultural Council was thrilled when they found out we gave them they were awarded $5,000 from the board. But I agree with you, so that's something that we can certainly, have those conversations with AgCom. And really what I would like to do is get to the point where we can invite them in, all of these groups in one by one, and kind of do what we did with the budget cycle, which I thought was really helpful, was when we had the department managers come in. It'd be great if we had these committees
Yeah.
come in and speak to us, so.
And I think, like, I would love to make a priority to have the ag stuff, give them direction if that's what they need.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so we can definitely revisit that with them and just find out what they're looking for from us.
Cool.
So we can do that.
Okay.
So do you want me to move my comments over to your column, or do you?
Well, I don't know, I mean.
Deliverables, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess if you want to, is that a deliverable for the working group? Is that a deliverable for the select board?
However you want to word it. So what
Yeah.
we'll do is we'll finalize the language in here that you want, and then, because it's going to go on the town website, and it's going to be, become part of our permanent goals, so.
If I can just comment on just the whole goal-setting process, it's really designed to create, it's a process through which we build consensus around policies and projects that impact the residents, the business community, and the community as a whole.
Master plan, yeah.
Yeah, and how it interacts with the master plan, and that vision, those principles, and those priorities that we set as the executive board of the town give direction for Joe and for the administration and for each department, frankly. So whether it be the police, fire, highway, finance, by us clearly defining what it is that we would like to see done for the community, that gives everybody some more direction.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be a volunteer committee or someone who shows up here 9 to 5 every day. So I think we need to be a little more salient. I think we just really need to boil these down so that we can create some deliverables, whether
More
it be.
specific?
I think, yeah, I mean, a goal is specific, it's measurable,
Yeah.
right? So it's attainable, so
Right.
we can use the SMART acronym to try to develop our goals, but we have a lot of great ideas, and there's a lot of things that we'd like to get done, but we're not making anything really terribly actionable. The sewer is probably the most,
That's
the one big thing that's in front of us that all of us are focused on, and we've got a lot of moving parts in that, and we've got a lot of folks that are very committed and have a lot at stake. But I feel like,
Well, I think some of them are vague, but some of them are very specific. So I don't know that I necessarily agree with you 100% on that. I mean, there are some specific goals in here, but the problem is if you try to tackle too many things, you get nothing done.
right, so that's why I think that if you're feeling like we should be focusing on ag, then that, we come up with a consensus and we say, yeah, out of our list of priorities, sewer's number 1, say, a senior center is number 2, and ag's number 3. Wherever we determine to be that pecking order, I think we have to go after that. And things may happen where we may get a grant for some piece of open space, or we may get some CPC funds, or something may happen that will shift our focus and our priorities, but we've got this kind of a roadmap in front of us that says, all right, where do we shift our focus? So I just.
So you want to set like 5 priorities as a board and agree upon that?
I like the idea when you say roadmap, because the roadmap is there. And sometimes a roadmap, you can have things that are vague that we're gonna get to later on because this is more pressing right now.
Right.
You know, so sometimes we've all seen that we've set goals in July, and almost a whole year's gone by, and we haven't touched that much because so many other things came up.
Right.
So that's why sometimes
That's a problem,
it's
right?
vague, it's still there, we still want to work on it, but it's not something we're taking direction on right now.
Right.
And the other thing is that particular goal that we had set that we didn't get to,
Right.
may have given some direction to the Economic Development Committee,
can
or may have given
delegate,
direction
that's-
to the Cultural Council.
That, and that's
Because
what I.
they see it's a priority for the Board of Selectmen has determined this is a priority for the town. Now, they kind of have a little bit of a marching order.
But that's
So-
that's what I mean by inviting them in. We need to have that conversation and say, we as a board would like you to undertake this. I heard that from the Sustainability Committee. They said if the board would just give us specific direction and say, hey, why don't you guys go work on this and then come back to us?
100%, but if we don't know what our priorities are, it's tough for us to tell them what our priorities are.
Well, so if you look at the committee, though, we have a Sustainability Committee, so let's pick a priority for them. We have a Master Plan Implementation Committee,
Sure.
let's pick a priority for them. AgCom, pick a priority for them.
But they all have to focus back on what our priorities are as a
That's what
whole.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Right, so let's
Yeah.
go back to ag, for example. So how do we determine what I could come up with, if I thought about it, I could probably come up with the priorities. I mean, I think that the lease is a good example of that, something that's been hanging out for a long time. Do you give that to me and say, and I'll come back to the board with, here's what I think the AgCom should be working on, and we discuss that and vote it, and we each take one or we each take two, and we come up with specifics for every board?
Well, so they each have a mission. If you go on the website, like we've crafted a mission for each one of these committees that we appoint. So, how do you want to approach it? Do we want to?
Brandon?
What's that?
Yes?
I'm sorry.
Who's this?
What is it?
Judith?
That was Judy.
Oh.
Maybe
So
that was accidental.
Oh, do we want to revisit the mission?
For each goal, for each committee?
Yeah.
No, I think we need to better define and better understand what our goals are. What is it that we, this year, between now and next May, what are 3 things that we want to get done?
Okay,
Or 5 things, or, I'm not
Right.
prescriptive, but, so that, all the other departments, when Joe has a meeting with department heads, he any decisions that they're making are in support or not in support of what our ultimate vision and goals and principles are.
Right.
The thing is, too, is that I like the idea what the chair said, that somewhere along the line, we should be bringing in maybe 2 committees a night or whatever.
I love that,
Because
yeah.
there's certain committees, I'd like to have them say, what are your goals? You joined this committee for what reason? Do you see the sustainability committee? Is there something you see that we're not doing?
Right.
Have them say to us, and then we can also exchange ideas. We have too, but
Have a
I don't like the idea of a committee being out there and saying, well, give us some direction. I think it's, if you join a committee, you must had a reason to do it. You must have some ideas that you can be bringing forth to the board to say,
Yeah.
can we work on this?
And collaboratively, we can come up with what their mission, what their goals are, or
Right.
what, you know. how
But
to
it
support
starts with having that dialogue, starts to bring them in, I agree completely. If you just look at the topic areas for the different initiatives and the goals, it's, you can pretty much translate that into an invitation list, Boom,
Right.
economic development, agriculture, everybody's got a committee, just bring them in,
Right.
and then they can tell us what they've got up there in their mind, and they can hear from us what our priorities are.
Right, good idea.
No, it is. I mean, yeah, that's perfect. And we do have a lot of common denominators in our goals,
Yeah.
which I thought was really interesting.
And to go back to your point about deliverables, I mean, the sewer, I think we all agree is very important, but that's the vaguest one of all. If you look at the matrix,
I
it just
know.
says, support the project. I mean,
Right.
we are like letting the subject matter experts on the sewer do the sewer, right? Which is fine, in my mind. I don't have any problem. I think that those guys are doing great and they're taking care of business. And my problem is with boards or committees that are not doing great and that are not meeting or are not following their mission. Like we should have maybe we should have goals for them, to your point, Joe, about, is it a collaboration? Well, some boards are gonna be like charging forward with what they think, and other ones may need more guidance.
And it's setting expectations, and I think someone said it earlier in the meeting today, people sign up for a committee, they don't really understand what it entails.
But if I could piggyback on something Matthew just alluded to, if you went back a year or two ago, Matthew, the sewer was very much something that we were hands-on and we were, and we were into the very much details. The fact that it's showing up as like a very small subject, support the project, is actually a reflection that we've already dealt with a lot of the detailed issues that were very important a couple of years ago. And one of those was, who should be running this thing? And we made that determination that it should be being administered by the Light and Water Commission, so it's kind of less of a burden on us, but as we heard earlier tonight, it's being acted on. What I'd love to see a few more of these topics kind of shrink down on our radar screen and become somebody else's active topic, as long as they're getting work done,
Right. So just going down the list quickly, out of the initiatives, all 5 of us listed the following: economic development, infrastructure needs, elder and human services, organizational review of policies and bylaws, and conservation and agriculture.
That's 5?
That's 5. All 5 of us for those 5.
Maybe those are the 5 we focus on first.
Good idea.
Yeah, and I think all the other things can be running in parallel.
Exactly.
I mean, you're not gonna not do anything for housing.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly, so,
If any one member wants to, take a lead on something and suggest an idea, nothing prevents him, he or she from putting it on the agenda or asking to be put on the agenda and take a stab at something.
right,
Above and beyond what we've talked about today.
right. But, yeah, so I think the matrix kind of spelled it out for
Yeah,
us.
I think you're right.
So are there changes to the matrix, or are we just gonna say we're gonna start talking to boards? Or are we gonna wait till next month to do that, given our
Our schedule.
current schedule of every week dealing with town meeting?
Right. Yes, maybe we should,
So we've historically had champions that have been assigned
Yeah.
to each initiative or each goal. If there's 5 of us, there's 10 slots essentially, so we'll each have 2. I
Right.
guess if 2 of us went after,
Why are there 10?
well, I'm thinking that we each.
Oh, I see,
we-
each of us has
So
champions, two
if
things.
you and I
Yeah,
were doing
yeah.
economic
I
development,
see.
for instance, then Cindy and Joe were doing, infrastructure needs.
I see.
I mean, we can do it, just one person decide, there's 5 of us, there's 5 goals. We can certainly either just each individually take on one, or pair up.
Out of the 5 we have there, I think it's a board type of situation. If someone wants to specify and come to our meeting and say, I concentrated on this week, I'm not necessarily sure that we've done it in the past, but.
Champions?
That somebody has to be a champion of this subject.
Yeah.
Because some along the line during the year, all of a sudden Matthew has an idea about this thing here. And I think he should be able to come back to the board and say, this is part of our goals.
Right.
Let's advance this, or what do you think of this?
Oh, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
All 5 of us are charging them, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then if we do get to a point, like you just said, Matthew comes up with this idea, he becomes a champion for bringing that
Right.
to fruition.
Right.
Okay. So we've identified the 5.
Yep.
The others are certainly
That-
on our hit list, but let's really focus this year on
Yep.
some impact, and I think we need to do a better job of defining.
I agree.
What is our goal for economic development? What is our goal for infrastructure needs, for elder and human services?
So refine
organization?
those. Yeah.
I think it does need to be refined, tightened
Yeah.
up, so that we have something that is in fact attainable,
Attainable, yep.
specific, measurable.
There you go.
On a real side note, you're talking about agricultural. I happened to read something 2 days ago that I found at my house from a Reverend Nason back in 1874. And he
How
talked.
old were you then?
Yeah, I was a young kid back then. But he mentioned how many people were in town, and the Grange and all that. Because and we have 142 farms.
Whoa.
142,
Wow.
and the population was 543 people. But that's.
So if you lived in Littleton, you were a farmer.
That's
the blacksmith.
crazy.
I
That's
bought
interesting.
I bought like an agricultural report from, I don't know, 1880 or something on for Littleton. Like Fred, I found it at a bookshop, or maybe it was for the Middlesex or the valley, the Neshoba Valley, and it's hilarious to read. I mean, it's just how many cattle did this and how many apple trees fell over in the windstorm in August, and but it's a whole like thick hardbound book that's just about like the agricultural report from the month. Anyway,
The almanac.
interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we'll revisit these and we'll refine them.
I think that's kind of, maybe that's our homework. We
Yeah.
each kind
Yeah.
of
Let's do that.
sink our teeth into these 5.
Okay.
And try to put some specificity around them.
Okay, I like it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds great. Paul, any comments?
No, I'm on board with that.
All right, great.
And then, Madam Chair, if I may just sort of in support of this, one of the things I always found helpful in sort of leading goal setting and especially coming up with the implementation plan was sort of thinking of like almost a vision statement for each, identifying that, say for economic development, we want to support local businesses, but then also help defray real estate costs and make Littleton a business-friendly place, because then within it, you can then take some of these have really good tasks and action
No, a lot of
items.
that stuff already exists. We've got a vision statement like that for EDC.
Yeah. And that's great. I'm just talking about something that then provides clarity, because here there's a lot of great tasks and specific actions.
Right.
To then really provide some
what
of that
end?
directions. Right.
Okay. All right,
Cool.
good. Yeah.
That's good.
All right, excellent. So we will revisit that, we'll refine and continue the discussion on our goals. Next item, I'm going to talk about the leash law, bylaw amendment. Did the board, everyone receive the memo I put together? Just kind of summarizing the process and how the committee that came together to help work on this with me. This was following up on our general board discussion that we had, and there was some great volunteers or, residents that came forward to make comments during that meeting that I then followed up with, and we kind of formed a little working group and came up with some suggestions for the leash law, and then crafted the amendments that you have before you. So I don't know if I talked to Chief Bernard about these. He thought that they looked good. One of the things that he did comment on and that the committee had commented on was the fees and the fines regarding the dog licenses are very low.
Okay.
And he just felt that we really should take another look at those and increase them. They were actually amended in 2005. So he was, Chief Bernard was going to look around to other communities and see what they were charging. But I didn't know if anyone had any questions or comments about the language itself.
I'm just, this is kind of a small thing. I'm not convinced that registering dog walkers is necessarily productive, I guess. I'm not sure. I obviously didn't go through the process you did.
Right.
It feels a little bit bureaucratic to me. Like if my kid wants to make some money over the summer walking dogs, does he need to go and register, for example?
Right.
So I think I understand some of the motivation behind it, but I wanted to hear more.
Where is that?
Yeah, where is that?
Yeah,
Well,
where is
it's
that,
at number
Matthew?
6 under possible solutions, research requirement for dog walker to be licensed
yeah.
and registered with the
That was
towns.
just a possible solution. We didn't put that in.
Okay, I mean, you know.
Yeah. No, so the only solutions that we put in here are what is redlined in the actual amendment.
Okay, all right.
That was just a discussion
Okay, all right,
topic.
good.
Yeah, yeah. No, we didn't go forward with that. I just included that language just so that the board could understand the discussions that we did have.
I
and
see.
the
Okay,
issues that
good,
were
all right.
identified.
No, I
But-
think this is excellent.
Yeah, but the only language that we're proposing to the board is what's in the actual amendments.
Got it.
The only nitpicky thing is on, under the revision, letter B, the last part of the red line part where it says, must be on leash within 25 feet of another resident or dog. Not that it's kind of, again, nitpicky, but does a person, or, I mean, instead of another resident, might not be a resident of Littleton, so do we just want to put another person?
Oh, another person. Yeah,
Human?
good catch. Okay.
Other people, this is plural.
I think
Okay.
this is the first bylaw that has poop in it
For Littleton.
There you go.
for Littleton.
Other people or dogs, okay. I wonder if yeah. Could say animals, but people or dogs, okay.
Put pets if you wanted. Someone has a little Vietnamese potbelly pig.
You never know.
They're iguana.
Or cat, could be walking their cat.
Could be.
Okay, was there any other questions or comments? I do have one thing I just need to follow up with town council on. Under public nuisances, letter I, they talk about the running of hunting dogs. So it kind of contradicts some of the language in the amendments. I'm just gonna have them take a look at that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
We've already included it on the warrant, so we don't need to take a vote on that.
Right. We just need to make that one amendment to people. Okay, great, thank you.
If that doesn't get changed, I don't think it's not,
Well,
not a big deal.
okay, and then, Mr. Layden, if you want to lead us off on 6D?
Sure thing. Okay, so within the board's packet, directly after the material that Cindy had included on the dogs, there's a letter and opinion from town council regarding the stipend and invoking the rule of necessity. It is captured within the motion. There is, as part of this, a filing that would be then made with the town clerk following the board's vote.
Okay,
So, town council's memo is pretty straightforward.
great. Any questions or comments from the board? Ready for a motion? Mr. Glavy?
Sure. I will move that the board vote to invoke the rule of necessity as advised by town council and in connection with the signing of an upcoming payroll warrant containing the annual stipends for the select board voted at the June 13th, 2020 annual town meeting.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
I vote no.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, so the motion passes 4-1 as written. And next, we are on to item number 7, the town administrator update.
Sure. So just wanted to give the board as far as an update. Last week was the first full week having a greeter welcoming visitors to town building. For the week, we had 40 visitors. Essentially, the top departments were town clerk and building. I think we could have guessed that at 8 each. Followed by then sort of a handful of others, including town administrator's office as well as tax collector and the finance department. So I haven't heard any concerns or complaints from either people visiting town hall or from staff. Primarily, people are coming here, they're doing their business and then leaving. Again, EHS is by appointment only, and they have been coming in and visiting the department, but checking in with the greeter to allow for the greeter to have a lunch break. Departments are rotating as far as just half-hour shifts, so on Mondays I take Mondays and gives a real opportunity to at least touch base with people coming in and the one or two people that I've met, at least interacting with them to make sure that things are going well. So going to keep an eye on how things are going this week. Basically, just looking at foot traffic from today, it's sort of trending about the same as about 8 to 12 people that we were seeing on a daily basis last week. One of the things we will have to give consideration and perhaps talk about it at the next meeting will be now that it's viewed that town offices are open, there's an inquiry as far as using office space for public meetings. Again, the challenge is that, such as this room, if there is something where, subject to open meeting law, some access, as in taping or on Zoom, needs to be done, so we are limited at space. The board's vote from back in March still stands, that it's the Board of Health and Select Board, with other boards meeting here with permission of the board and the town administrator's office. So currently, because it then necessitates a hybrid meeting, so for example, say CPC wanted to meet here tomorrow night, they are by Zoom, so we don't have to worry about that, just using it as an example. LCTV would have to then assist by having that hybrid meeting. It's not something that that people have asked for, but it's something that I want to raise to the board's attention because there is just a question as far as, well, can we start meet again? But again, to make sure that the public has the ability to access the meeting, then it starts bringing those questions as far as technology, filming, or whatnot. So I've been talking with Mark Rory with LCTV as far as maybe identifying what's needed so that we can come and revisit this at a future time, should the board want to open it up beyond currently Board of Health, Select Board, and others with the boards and our office approval. So that's sort of a snapshot right now. Trying to think as far as anything else. That's basically it. I did want to give an update on some of the hiring. We are finalizing offer for the HR manager. So a really great candidate where Joe and I were on the interview panel. We're very excited to have her join. So just needs to finish some of the background checks and all that stuff. Are going through and doing some pre-screening of some of the assistant treasurer positions, and also reviewing candidates and resumes for the town treasurer's position as well. So we are moving forward and really hope that over the next month we'll be able to have interviews and start having people come to fill those positions with the impending retirement of Ann Esmond and Steve Venuti in end of October.
Okay.
So.
Great.
Just quickly,
Thank you.
back to the HR thing too, is that we interviewed those people. When we've all done interviews before, and you have your little checklist, you write your little notes down, and you're always careful what you're doing, but the first candidate we interviewed, check, check, check. Everything was almost all there, thing, and it was all in pencil, because the next person might have been, that wasn't the case. We hit it off pretty well, that first candidate. So.
Yeah,
That's
great. And also, really relevant experience. A lot of things we've gone through, such as going from SoftWrite to Munis, had handled the same thing. So literally, it was everything that we've gone through that Ann would be looking at training. They've had some level of experience of going exactly through the same thing.
Wow, that's great.
So I think we were really lucky. I think we felt really lucky after going through that.
Good.
So.
That's wonderful. Excellent. All right, great. So we are now on to item 8. This is just procedural, correct?
Correct. So as the board may recall from some of our other marijuana establishments, once they have gone through the Cannabis Control Commission's process, getting a provisional license, we get a document back from CCC asking to make sure that they then conform with local processes and regulations. This is basically an administrative form, and the board had previously authorized the town administrator to sign this municipal response form.
Okay, Dan, here for this.
Is there a motion, Madam Chair?
Number 8.
Oh, I'm gonna just abstain.
Yes.
Okay. Move that the select board vote to authorize the interim town administrator to complete and sign the municipal response to the Cannabis Control Commission for those in the partnership.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Abstain.
Mr. Glavy?
Yes.
Cindy Napoli is yes, so the motion is approved as written, 4 in favor and 1 abstain. And now we're on to minutes from August 24th, 2020. Anyone have any questions or comments about the minutes?
Look good for me.
Good as always. Move that the board vote to approve the regular session meeting minutes of August 24th, 2020.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written, and the minutes are accepted. Thank you.
Madam Chair, a joke, through you to joke, can you remind me, I did take handwritten minutes of a couple of our executive sessions over the summer. Before it gets too late, I probably should, I'm asking you to remind me to get those in writing so the board can vote on them on an upcoming meeting.
Okay, I will do that. Okay, great. And so we are ready to adjourn, and our next meeting is next week,
14th?
Yes.
September 14th. Great. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Yes.
Mr. DeCoste?
I am in favor.
Mr. Knox?
Okey dokey.
Cindy Napoli is in favor. That concludes our meeting for this evening. Good night, and we will be back next Monday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Littleton.
Night all.
Aye.